Sure to be sure of your benefits. Sickness and maternity, I'll tell you about the rest of it. Survivors grant your spouse and kids get the best of it. Let me mention pension when you're 62. When you're done work hard and retire, this is what to do. Listen, this Social Security is working for all your benefits. Funeral grant to help every one of your relatives. Come register for this Social Security. Social Security. So every time you get your pay, Social Security.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Social Security and You, your information and education program brought to you by the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board. In this edition, we'll be speaking with Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian on the coronavirus impact on St. Kitts Nevis, and more specifically, we'll be speaking about the education and the vaccine rollout. We'll be right back after this brief message. Stay tuned.
From the foundation up, I make sure that my contributions to Social Security are paid in full and on time. My business is everything to me, and there is a sense of comfort I gain knowing that as a self-employed individual, Social Security covers me from the foundation up.
Social Security, because you deserve a future.
Welcome back. Joining me is Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian. As promised, in Season 8, we'll be speaking about health and wellness. And of course, we can't have a discussion on health and wellness without speaking about the coronavirus. Welcome, Dr. Sebastian.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, we want to talk in real terms about how has St. Kitts Nevis been managing the COVID-19 process.
Okay. Well, I think St. Kitts and Nevis has been one of the better countries in the world managing COVID-19 in terms of our numbers. Since the pandemic, we've only had 44 positive cases and they've all recovered. So we're thankful for that. We have, however, had a very strict quarantine process where you would come in and you had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And if a positive test shows up, then you would be further quarantined for an additional time until your test becomes negative.
So that's primarily one of the reasons why we've been able to contain it. And what's amazing is that we've been able to keep the healthcare providers or those persons who work closely with those individuals safe.
Yes. So we required protective equipment, our hazard suits and those type of things, so that the healthcare providers can be safe when they're dealing with COVID-19 patients, positive patients, and whenever they're swabbing individuals coming into the country.
So that means there have been extensive training programs as well for all those persons involved.
Yes, so there's been basically training to how to don and gown personal protective equipment so that we're safe when we're going into these environments with individuals that may be infected with COVID-19 or known to be infected with COVID-19.
Well, to be honest, we've had some public outcry say we've been quite strict. But why is it important for us to continue with the preventative measures?
Well, it's important to continue with the preventative measures, and especially here in St. Kitts because we have such a small population. If there is community spread, it simply just doesn't affect one area of the community, it affects the entire population. For instance, there's only a limited amount of healthcare workers in St. Kitts. If we have an outbreak, let's say, in the hospital between healthcare workers, that will basically cause a disruption in the healthcare service in St. Kitts and Nevis. If, let's say, 5 to 10 healthcare workers in a hospital go down, then you have an overworked staff, and that affects the general public and how they actually receive care. So that's why it's important.
And the truth is, it doesn't stay at the hospital.
No, it doesn't.
It's going to spread and it'll be all over everywhere. Too overwhelming for us.
Yes.
No, I'm glad that you mentioned that because we sort of lose what the coronavirus is now that we have the vaccination. Most of the conversation has been about vaccination.
Yes.
Tell us about the coronavirus impact and what it does to someone who's impacted, who's affected?
Okay, so at first we simply thought the coronavirus was a bad respiratory illness. Basically, it affects the lungs and how you breathe. But then, furthermore, as time went along, we've discovered that the coronavirus affects nearly all of the body's systems. So we're finding people are getting psychological disorders. Individuals have gotten depression because of coronavirus. They've gotten heart illnesses because of the coronavirus. They've gotten kidney illnesses because of the coronavirus. You can name it. The coronavirus has, and it also increases the chance for blood clots for individuals. So what they found after a certain amount of time, even if you've recovered from the coronavirus, you are still prone to getting these illnesses later down. I believe it's 1 in 3 individuals that can get a neurological illness after coming into contact with the coronavirus.
If I look shocked, I am, because I don't think we would have realized the terrible impact on the body. We see the place shut down, and those are serious measures to be taken by any government to stop production, to halt and say, stay where you are, and so on. So it has to be that this illness is quite deadly.
It's a worldwide initiative. I mean, Canada has just started another lockdown. Different countries are going back into lockdown because they're losing control, and that may be a combination of things. Either people aren't social distancing, they're not using hand sanitizer, they're not wearing their masks, and perhaps the population isn't are hesitant about being vaccinated. And we as healthcare providers understand the hesitancy, because with everything, any type of medication that you take, it's an individual decision, and you have to feel comfortable and be ready to take that type of medication. Even though scientists and doctors have said it is safe, according to the studies, it's still a personal decision, and it's relatively new. And everyone has been bombarded with not just the coronavirus, but now there's a vaccine afterwards. So there's so much information to take in, and there's also so much misinformation circulating around the internet especially.
But that leads into my next question. What do we need to know about the vaccine, and specifically about the one that we have here, the AstraZeneca? Okay,
so the AstraZeneca vaccine specifically, it's a safe and effective vaccine. It's been proven in the studies that they initially did. The U.S. even had their own studies of the AstraZeneca, and it's been proven to be safe and effective there as well. Regarding the specifics of this vaccine, so like any vaccine, it's used to prevent severe disease, hospitalization, and death. So there's no vaccine that is 100% effective at stopping any disease that existed. That's never been created. But what it does is it stops severe illness, it stops hospitalization, and it stops death 100% of the time, according to the studies and according to real life now. So it's a possibility that you can still show up positive for coronavirus, or you might get a mild cold or flu-like symptoms, but you won't be debilitated where you can't go to work and society won't function. And that's what we need to protect, the society's function.
So that's important that you say that, because there has been a lot of misinformation, a lot of fear, a lot of skepticism about taking it. You've heard things as far-fetched. Well, let me don't say far-fetched, but you've heard certain claims such as it changes your DNA, or so. Explain some of the myths and provide us with the science to prove.
Okay, so I understand the where that misinformation would come from when they say it changes your DNA, because a lot of the vaccines, for example, the Pfizer and the Mrna, what they do, they market themselves as an mRNA vaccine.
What is that?
So messenger RNA, all of our cells have those inside the body. So what messenger RNA sends a message to your nucleus to do a certain act, whatever the act may be. So what that does, messenger RNA, and regarding the Pfizer, the Mrna, it sends a message to your cells to produce these COVID-19 proteins, not the virus itself, but these proteins that COVID-19 has. And when your body sees these proteins, it basically forms an immune response to it because it's a foreign entity to your body. The AstraZeneca uses a different method, but it basically results to the same thing. So it uses a common cold virus called the adenovirus, and that has in its own genetic material, they modified it, so it can send a message to your cells to produce these COVID-19 proteins. The only real difference between the steps is just the AstraZeneca is just a step longer in the process, but it results at the same COVID-19.
So we all get to the same destination, really.
Basically.
So, so we've also heard, I don't want AstraZeneca, I want Pfizer, I want Moderna, I want Johnson & Johnson. But I think through what you've just explained, pretty much the same thing.
It's just a different method to get to the same point.
Yeah.
So if you look at an example, you have a million different cars, but
That was going through my mind.
Each of them
Yes.
have different engines, but these engines all help the car to run. It gets you to your destination. So I guess that's a easier way to look at it. It all results in the same thing. Maybe one car might move a little faster, maybe one might be more fuel efficient, but they all do what they're supposed to do. And in this case, this is what the vaccine is supposed to do: prevent severe illness, hospitalization, and death, and they all do that.
Okay, we'll take a break, and we'll be right back with a few questions just before we wrap up.
I am Greg Seaton, owner of Greg's Taxi Service. I pay my contribution on time and in full. If I am unable to work, I know that I am guaranteed income replacement. I smile because I know that Social Security has me covered.
Social Security, because you deserve a future.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you would have missed a lot. We're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and the management of the process on St. Kitts. We've also started speaking about the vaccination process, and we'll go right back into that. Dr. Sebastian, tell us about the vaccination process on St. Kitts Nevis.
Okay, so the vaccination process in St. Kitts and Nevis. So it's divided into two parts: the educational process, where myself and a couple of individuals, we're known as the vaccine educational team, different and separate from the task force, and it's our job to basically educate individuals about the vaccine, its side effects, and how it protects you against COVID-19. And then there's the other part where there is the health centers that actually have and house the vaccines in St. Kitts and Nevis. So all health centers in St. Kitts and Nevis should have the vaccine available to individuals, so they can go down to their health center and they can ask about the vaccine. They can answer the majority of questions there. When you have the 311 hotline where you can call, you can talk to your private doctor if you want about the vaccines, or the nurses, to have a better understanding of the vaccine itself and the rollout program. So usually a vial contains about 10 doses of the vaccine for every individual to take. Then there's also a second dose that's always waiting for an individual once they've taken the vaccine. So if you have taken your first vaccination, then there's always a second dose waiting for you, because we don't want individuals to just
Have their first shot and
and
not
then
available
unavailable for the
Yes.
second. So that's a measure that they've put in place to ensure that everyone is fully vaccinated once they've gotten their first shot.
Talk numbers. What's this herd immunity and getting to 70%? How much doses have we administered so far, and where are we in terms of the 70% ratio there?
Okay, so last I checked yesterday, we were about 9,700 plus individuals, and that's about 29.7%, I believe. And so today we should reach about 30 plus percent. And so we're not bad. We're definitely not the worst in our region in terms of the vaccination rollout. We're actually doing a pretty good job. But if we move at this current rate, which I've been noticing over the past few weeks myself, we're at around 200 individuals per day. If we continue at that rate, we're not going to reach there until September.
That's way too far.
That's a long time. So hopefully, I'm hoping myself that this educational process can speed things up, because we didn't start the educational process until the vaccine was actually here. But hopefully this is going to give us some momentum that we can move forward a little faster.
If you were to say a number daily, what would that number be? Because if we're at 200,
Okay.
yes.
To speed things up. So we want to speed things up by at least 1.5 times. So 300 would be good. That would get us maybe 1 or 2 months earlier, or maybe 2 times. That would even be better. So 400 there. I know that's a lot to ask.
No, let's say it, 500.
500 would be a perfect world.
Yes.
But
I want us to realize the impact. The impact and the functionality. So that leads into our next question.
Yeah.
What do we expect as we move forward? If we don't move, what is going to happen?
Okay, so
And if we do move, what's to be expected?
Okay, so this all comes down to herd immunity. We're reaching the 70%, and so the reason why we have to get to herd immunity, or the reasoning behind herd immunity, is that if enough people or individuals in a population have the vaccine, they're less likely to transmit it, even if they do come into contact with COVID-19, and even if it doesn't allow the virus a chance to mutate and replicate. And as we've heard, there are new variants popping up all over the world, and that's a big problem, because there may be a variant that pops up that the vaccine isn't effective against. So that's what we're trying to avoid. So the more people get the vaccine, the less likely the virus is going to mutate, because the vaccine stimulates your immune system to fight against the virus. And if the virus is busy fighting against the immune system, it doesn't have a chance to mutate, and it has less of a likelihood to transmit to other individuals. So you basically take away the environment that the virus has to thrive.
Yes, and I'm here thinking of it like a football team, an American football team.
Yeah.
Once we're all together collectively fighting it,
Yes.
we could resume some sense of normalcy, which impacts not only your health but our economy and the functioning of all the institutions that help to keep our organization, that help to keep St. Kitts Nevis afloat. Well, we've run out of time already, and so we'll ask Dr. Sebastian to wrap up, give us his final plea, and we can move forward.
Okay, so hopefully everyone has learned something about this session today about the vaccine. Hopefully you're inspired to take the vaccine. If not, if you need more time, that's understandable. I don't believe anyone should be persecuted for not wanting to take the vaccine, but I hope everyone at least has an open mind into learning and becoming more accepting of the realities that are. For instance, opening our borders, that's essential to stimulate the economy. People need jobs. People need access to certain resources, and we need to open up our economy so we can purchase these resources, especially regarding health. We need money to actually have a proper functional healthcare system to keep everyone safe and healthy. And food as well. We import a lot of food as well here in St. Kitts. So just keep an open mind, learn as much as you can about the vaccine and about COVID-19. Check reliable sources. The WHO is a reliable source, and it's a very unbiased source because it's not for any one country, it's for the World Health Organization.
Thank you, Dr. Sebastian. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, remind your employers to keep paying your contributions in full and on time. Employees, check on your contribution status. Self-employed persons, if you're having a challenge, even an employer, if you're having a challenge, be sure to visit your Social Security. Take care.
Sure to be sure of your benefits. Sickness and maternity, I'll tell you about the rest of it. Survivors grant your spouse and kids get the best of it. Let me mention pension when you're 62. When you're done work hard and retire, this is what to do. Listen, this social security is working for all your benefits. Funeral grant to help every one of your relatives. Come register for this. Social security. Social security. So every time you get your pay. Social security.